All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Six Boroughs Basketball Network. And I am your host who knows the most, the scholar baller himself. And we are here at the It's a Raptors Ting podcast. All right, what can I say? March Madness or March Mod Ting? Because honestly, March has been a wild month. Totally wild month. Lots of things happening. It's just it. This first of all, this month has felt really long and drawn out. I'm just gonna start off a little bit on a personal note. This month was really difficult for me personally, just because unfortunately my maternal grandfather, so my grandfather on my mom's side, recently passed away in the month of March. So it's just been like very tough, my last time visiting him, he was on his hospital bed and everything like that. So that was definitely a very sad scene. And unfortunately, earlier in the month of March, he passed away, and there was funeral proceedings and all of that following. So, I'm still definitely a person who's grieving. I'm still definitely a person who's in mourning. And I've really just kind of taken some time to step away. I took some bereavement time at my actual like job, but I also took some time just away from the Six Boroughs Basketball Network. And probably by the time this video gets uploaded, it probably will be uploaded in early April. But that's what's been happening on a personal note. So just been going through the emotions with that. Just gonna pivot over again, no pun intended, but just gonna pivot over into a little bit about the Raptors. I'm gonna keep this I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna keep this episode pretty short, pretty sweet. But yeah, the Raptors have had some ups and downs. In summation, it's just been kind of like the Raptors, they've been doing their usual routine of losing to the good teams, aka the plus 500 teams, and also just like winning against the bad teams. They've had a few outlier victories. They had an outlier victory against Detroit in the month of March. They had an outlier victory against Phoenix as well. But they also lost to those teams too. Recently, they like set a record against Orlando. Like they had 31 unanswered points. I think Orlando is plus 500. They're definitely lower than the Raptors in the standings, but nonetheless, like it's just been a wild month. The last episode I spoke a lot about synchronicity. I'm still not seeing it yet. I still think the Raptors are, very enigmatic in the sense that you don't really know fully what you're going to get from them. But for the most part, that it likely isn't going to be a good result when it matters most. And I think, to be honest, I feel like that's kind of the verdict on this team right now, is that the result that you're gonna get from them is more or less, they'll have their run towards the end of the season, and they'll likely hold down a playoff spot without having to touch the play-in. However, the first round, it's like total toss-up. They're probably not going to win it. I just don't think, again, I'm just going to assume for discussion purposes that they're likely going to face Cleveland in the first round. I don't see that turning out too well for the Raptors. I just don't think the Raptors have the poise and the confidence and the experience necessary to take down a pretty veteran savvy Cavaliers team led by Donovan Mitchell and James Harden. Of course, both of those guys are ironically known for falling short of the occasion in the playoffs, but I think those two have enough juice in the tank to lead a solid roster of players against the current iteration of the Raptors. So I'm not really too thrilled about the potential there and what I'm really gonna end up with seeing. So yeah, the jury's still out on that, but we might not like the verdict when it does come. So I'm just gonna put it out there. Quick little switch. It wouldn't be March without any mention of the NCAA men's Division One March Madness basketball tournament. I know that's been going on in the periphery. Again, I haven't really been paying as much attention to it, largely due to, again, personal life circumstances that I mentioned earlier. And just, life's just been very busy. And again, I primarily do follow the Raptors, but, good basketball is good basketball. And boy, was I in for quite the treat. Because I managed to catch a significant portion of the choke job that was the Duke Blue Devils versus the UConn Huskies in that Elite Eight game. So again, shout outs to the Baller Father series that's been starting on this channel. You can check the channel playlist if you want to look into that. But I was in the midst of, doing my fatherly duties. And, these days, most of the time that I do get to sit down and watch any semblance of basketball, it's usually during the time where where I put my daughter to sleep. So, she was asleep. So, and I think it was either, I can't remember if it was a Saturday afternoon or it was a Sunday afternoon. That game likely, the Duke versus UConn game, I think it was likely a Sunday game. Can't fully recount it at the moment, but it was definitely a weekend game. So I was giving my daughter her afternoon nap at that time, and it was just like, I caught the choke job and I was like, oh, I'm watching the game. I'm like, Duke has the lead, but they don't really seem like they're gonna hold it down like that. They just, and I could just see the energy radiating off of UConn's bench, right? And Dan Hurley, which is UConn's coach, he didn't even look like he was really barking out orders necessarily. Dan Hurley looked like he was just out there kind of going with the flow and believing in his guys to come back and win. And boy, was that quite the historic comeback. Not only did Duke blow a 19-point lead, but that was a rudimentary basketball mistake made by Caden Boozer. I mean, that is tough. UConn was out here in that play risking it all with the double team, because when you're on defense in a press like that and you double team and you leave the offensive team with players leaking out down the floor, that is the definition of vulnerability. But UConn really did put it all out on the line defensively, and sure enough, they got the deflection, right? They actually managed to get the deflection, and the ball found its way to the shooter from Indiana, Mullings is the last name, And, like he shot that from, between the between the half court and the 3-point line, in between there, he shot it from around that area. And the whole time, like honestly, from the moment he shot it, like I felt it. I was like, oh, he's about to make this shot, right? Sometimes like real hoopers, you just know, like when a mistake is catastrophic enough to the point where the subsequent play is about to be costly, because no catastrophe goes unpaid for the most part in sports. So if you make a pivotal mistake, expect for the opposing team to capitalize on it. And man, they hit the shot, and it was just like that. It was like game over pretty much. Like, sure, I think there was like 0.4 of a second left. So technically there was enough time to catch, like to inbound catch and like throw up a quick shot for Duke, but you just knew it was over after Mullings hit that shot. You knew it was over. Duke had no timeouts left. It just, no, right? So crazy ending. I barely got to catch any March Madness, but that little moment that I'm so happy to be able to come onto this podcast and share that with y'all. Like that little moment is just a reminder of, quality over quantity, right? Like, even when you think about like the game itself, it's like, Duke is kind of like this blue blood school, right? And and to an extent, UConn is kind of a blue blood school too. Again, people who follow the NCAA might check me a little bit more on the UConn thing, but I feel like UConn, they've been around, they've got some titles, right? So, but Duke is definitely more of the epitome of what it means to be a blue blood school, especially when it comes to like contemporary collegiate basketball. However, at the same time, it's like, yo, it's been like 10 years since the last national championship. Now that's not the worst thing, because every program kind of goes through this, like UCLA back in the how long ago, the mid 1900s, with John Wooden, like they won titles back then, but then that dynasty ended. And then the next notable college dynasty, you had Dean Smith at North Carolina, and then the North Carolina Tar Heels kind of became, and again, I'm speed running through like, decades of NCAA history, but North Carolina kind of became like the blue blood school for a hot minute. And then Duke kind of just rose through the ranks. They had to get it out the mud in the 80s, didn't really do too much. And then the 90s is when they broke through and became the blue blood school. They had some success in the 2000s. And they also, I believe their last national championship, please correct me if I'm wrong, because again, NCAA is not really my main focus. I only know offhandedly because, a lot of the people from the NCAA come to the NBA, so that lore kind of follows through a little bit, it has a little bit of staying power. But nonetheless, it's been around 10 years since like Duke had anything to do with the national championship, right? So, and they, in light of recent times, like they've been choking, right? Especially since Coach K retired. And it's like, yeah, quality over quantity. Duke gets all the top recruits. You hear about it all the time. They get all these top high-ranking guys, and they have failed to win the big one, often falling short in like the Elite Eight. And it sounds weird to say that, falling short in the Elite Eight. Like, it's amazing to even make it to the Elite Eight, but when you think about the prestige that Duke has to always, they usually always have like one of the top 3 projected picks, sometimes even 2 of the top 3 projected picks, or 2 of the top 5 projected picks on their team. So it's like, yeah, man, like, they really choked, man. And yeah, John Shire, I don't know, I'm not gonna say that he's a bad coach. I don't think that that's necessarily warranted at this time. I think, you know, there needs to be some context. It's very hard to win an NCAA championship. You know, 64 teams in the tournament, 68 teams if you include the wild card, but or the first four, if you will. But nonetheless, it's like, yeah, it's a wild situation, and yeah, Duke's got to find a way to put it together. So yeah, you know, this is my podcast right here. This is it for today. Just cause, you know, it just had to go this way. And I'm just happy to even be filming. And you know, I'm definitely on my Toronto man time, but you know, this time is warranted. So you know, the March Mod Ting video is coming out. It's coming out. It's dropping, and but it is dropping late because Toronto man time. All right. With that being said, saying it's a Raptors Ting, eh? Please like, comment, and subscribe.